Well, Phil Kerpen, he is a free market advocate, and he joins us today to talk about. He has written the book, by the way, called Democracy Denied. But I think today we want to talk to him about Obama's ongoing war
President
on
Obama.
President Obama. Pardon me. Thank you for
Yes.
that. Because you know I'm a stickler. I remind folks of that all the time.
Yeah.
He is our president. President Barack Obama and his ongoing war against the coal industry. Now, Phil, welcome to today's issues, one, but two, some folks say that there is no war on coal. What's your proof?
Well, thanks, Walt. First of all, thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, it's interesting because all of last year we were out there, a lot of other groups are out there pretty aggressively talking about the war on coal and on affordable electricity and affordable energy more generally under this administration, and Obama denied it. His surrogates denied it. They said it wasn't true. It was a myth. There is no war on coal. There was an AP article that said it was all a myth. But you get past the election and safely reelected, and I think it was about 3 weeks ago now, the president announces a big speech on global warming at Georgetown University. One of his top advisors runs to the New York Times for this story to preview the speech that morning, and he says, well, this is a paraphrase, but he said, well, the politics of it weren't that good, but we really do need a war on coal. And then the president, in that speech, he basically came out and said, I'm going to issue a presidential memorandum, which he has since done, to the Environmental Protection Agency, directing them to issue regulations that will effectively shut down all of the coal-fired power plants in this country. And so this is now the reality that we're facing. The president has issued that directive, and the EPA, I'm sure, is eagerly writing that regulation. We'll probably see it by next year.
Now, tell us, what happens when that regulation actually goes into effect?
Well, what will happen is it depends on exactly what the compliance timeline is that they write into the regulation, how long they give utilities to switch. But basically, utilities across the country who they'd run coal-fired power plants, and coal still provides about 40% of the electricity in this country, a little under that, it's in the high 30s, they're going to face a choice of either using so-called carbon capture and storage technology, which is one option the rule will provide, but that technology doesn't exist, it's not commercially available, and so that's sort of a mythical option, or they will have to decommission those plants and build new gas plants to replace them, or they will have to convert those plants to natural gas. Those will be the only choices they face. They're going to be very expensive, and you've got a lot of coal plants that have many decades of productive life left on them, and you're talking about very expensive, long-lived assets that are going to be prematurely retired, and the cost recovery for that's all going to go into the rate base, and so ratepayers are going to have to pay for that.
Talking to Phil Kerpen, Kerpen. Phil's website is philkerpen.com. The book he's got out is called Democracy Denied. And basically the essence of this is, Phil, that President Obama has used his office and administration to usurp the legislative process, or what?
Yeah, that's what the book's about, and of course, the use of
czars,
the EPA and presidential memoranda is one of the chapters in the book. But which, by the way, this is a huge blow to my ego. But I should mention that at the moment, Amazon is selling the book for 12 cents. And so if anyone has even the slightest interest in this subject matter, you can get the book for the price of
man.
Next
thing you'll be on the garage sale table.
Yeah, is postage included in that?
I don't know. It's been 12 cents for 2 or 3 weeks now, so I guess Amazon's just desperately trying to get rid of them. But I promise, it's actually a pretty good book. The price notwithstanding.
I understand.
Phil, at that price, you could almost give a money-back guarantee.
I would be. You know what? I will. If you buy it and you don't like, I will give you your 12 cents back.
Hey, let me ask you this. Draw this out a little bit for us in terms of the war on coal by President Obama and his administration, and the people on the far left who subscribe to this ideology of I guess, planet rescue or green energy or whatever like that. And believe me, I think everybody wants clean, efficient energy. But let me draw the ideology out here and where they're coming from and what their goals and objectives are, because I think that's the scariest part of this whole deal. including the job loss that will come and how this will hurt the economy. But the first of all, the motivation for the war on coal is the idea that coal hurts the environment, which leads to global warming, which is going to cause the planet to melt. Have I got that in about 3 sentences there?
Well, that's sort of the the stated objective.
Is that how they sell it?
Really
Is that how they sell it?
Yeah. The president in his big speech said, we need to do this for global warming.
Okay.
But if you unpack it a little bit, that really doesn't hold a lot of water because the global warming is a global phenomenon, if you believe all of the computer models and the scare stories and all the rest of it. So the idea that changing what kind of power plants we use in the United States will somehow save the world, I don't think holds up to any scrutiny at all. And in fact, there's a scholar at the Cato Institute named Chip Knappenberger who took the UN climate models, the official models from the doomsayers of global warming and all the rest of it, and he plugged into their models what would happen if we shut down the entire U.S. economy completely, zero emissions from the United States, which, of course, this regulation wouldn't accomplish that. It would do much less than that. But he said even if you somehow shut down all emissions from the United States, what does that mean for global warming according to the UN's own computer models and so on? And he found that it would reduce global temperatures by 2050 0.08 degrees if you shut down the entire U.S. economy. And he also found that the rest of the world would make up for the emissions from the United States within 7 years. And so when you talk about doing measures that are much less than shutting down the whole U.S. economy, like converting all the coal plants to natural gas, you're really talking about doing something that will have zero environmental benefit.
Okay, then why?
Impact.
Well, then the question obviously is, why would he be pushing for this? He knows this.
Well, I think part of it is sort of a green vanity, the kind of this idea that we'll feel better about ourselves if we quote do something, even if the thing we're doing doesn't really have much of an effect. So I think there is a little bit of true believerism there, but I think a lot of it is driven by sort of, the usual venal politics, rewarding your friends, punishing your enemies, and so forth. And Obama has tremendous ties to the renewable energy industry. He raised a lot of money from wind and solar interests. He rewarded them with tremendous amounts of grant money from the stimulus, and yet they haven't been successful. And I think that, disadvantaging through regulation fossil fuels is probably the only way to try to make some of those people, profitable. And so I think that has a lot to do with it also.
What about the people in Pennsylvania and West Virginia and that region of Ohio and that region of the Kentucky, that region of the country who are being directly affected by this in terms of their jobs?
Yeah, and they're under assault not just from these regulations of power plants, but also a very direct regulatory assault from the EPA under Clean Water Act and other permitting issues. And, they're trying to do everything they can to hamstring that industry. But, surprisingly, so far, the coal industry in terms of production has actually held up to this war pretty well because they've been able to export. And I think that, if the Obama administration succeeds in shutting down most domestic use of coal, it's only a matter of time before they try to shut down the ports as well. And, all of the people working in the coal industry, they would eventually like to see out of that line of work, even if it means that they're not working at all, because there are not a lot of other jobs right now in those areas. Interestingly, in Ohio, you've got a big boom in natural gas production, which in theory would benefit from the shift away from coal to more natural gas. But of course, the administration wants to regulate and stop a lot of natural gas production as well with all of the scare stories they're telling about fracking. And so I think that it is a bleak outlook for a lot of people in coal country if these policies succeed.
Where can people read your story on this?
You can get it. You mentioned my personal website, philkerpen.com. You can also go to our organizational website, americancommitment.org. I'm the president of American Commitment. And if you go to americancommitment.org and click on issues and then click on energy, you'll see a lot of stuff related to that.
What would you say if I said this, Phil? President Obama knows this isn't going to do any good. He doesn't care because he owes his political friends who are far left greenies who, are anti-capitalist. So he's going to promote this and push this, as you said, for them. But it hurts the American economy. It hurts our self-reliance on energy. But he is, I know I'm going a long drawn out, but President Obama is some people call it anti-capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
And so, spread the wealth kind of guy. So it doesn't bother him that this is going to kill a lot of jobs.
Right.
It doesn't bother him that it's going to create greater dependency on foreign energy. It doesn't bother him. So what would you say to that analysis of his?
Well, look, I think there's a lot to that. The Heritage Foundation did an analysis of these new power plant regulations, and they found the cost for an average family of four is $1,400 in lost income. And so if you make everyone in the country $1,400 poorer, they're going to be more dependent on government programs. They're going to be more likely to vote Democrat and so forth. And so, you could make an argument that this is consistent with a broader ideology that we've seen from this administration. And, I believe that at some point they're going to come out for a big carbon tax, a big energy tax, and they're actually going to take money out of the pockets of people in the middle class whenever they use energy, and they're going to use that to directly send new welfare checks to lower-income people, and then they're going to say, see, we've made gas free for lower-income people, we've made home heating free for lower-income people, and the whole cost of that is going to be borne by the
gas
middle class
stamps
through a redistribution scheme.
You got gas stamps on the way?
Wow.
I think it's likely. That feature is included in bills that have now been introduced in both the House and the Senate. The Senate bill by Barbara Boxer from California is likely to be marked up sometime this year, and there are discussion drafts in the House as well. Now, I don't think that's likely to see the light of day as long as Republicans control the House. But if this administration can get the House back in the election next year, I think a big new tax and redistribution scheme for energy is very likely.
You're listening to the program Today's Issues on American Family Radio. I'm Jim Stanley alongside Tim Wildman, and our guest is Phil Kerpen, who is the president of American Commitment, and you can find out more information on Phil and his articles at...
Got a test for you, Jim.
All right,
okay,
go
ahead and give his website.
AmericanCommitment.com, AmericanCommitment.org, or PhilKerpen.com.
Yeah, and Phil's name is Kerpin. If you can't spell Phil, then we can't help you.
Pen.
Yeah, PhilKerpen.
Pen.
Okay, that's .com.
Yep.
All right, Jim, did you pay attention early in the program when Phil told us exactly how much, what percentage of U.S. electricity is provided by coal?
Is this an open book test?
No, this is not an open book test. 37%.
Yeah.
That is, you're talking about being at war, Phil, with an industry that provides us with almost 40% of our electricity.
Well, can I ask a question?
It was actually over 50% when Obama came into office, and so they've already made a major dent in.
Well, and that observation leads to my direct question: is part of this the reason for more brownouts and blackouts this year than have been in previous years?
I haven't seen any statistics on that. I think most places right now, the grid operators are doing a pretty good job of dealing with all these regulations and meeting reliability concerns. But I think going forward, that's going to become a much bigger issue, especially if we rely more on inherently intermittent sources of electricity like wind and solar. And wind in particular is having a very destabilizing impact on electricity reliability because there's a huge federal tax credit for wind electricity, the production tax credit. And so wind operators can actually sell electricity into the grid at a negative price because then they get the huge subsidy from the federal government. And so they, in some places in the country now, and this has especially been a problem in Texas from time to time, the spot price for electricity actually goes negative because the wind operators are selling into the grid at a negative price to get as much government money as they can get. And that basically means every other operator needs to shut down. If you're running a coal or a nuclear plant, it's very hard to throttle down, so you take the losses, as it were, but the gas plants all shut down and so forth. And if you're in that kind of an environment where because of bad government policies, you've actually got people who are selling at a negative price, it's almost impossible to justify investing in any other kind of new power plant. And so I think we're going to have real capacity issues in a lot of places in this country if we continue to have these crazy policies that subsidize wind in particular.
Well, as we move forward on that, if they continue, I mean, because in your book you point out it's not just a war on coal, there's also a war on other natural resources, especially offshore drilling and even some onshore drilling here in America. Is the goal here just to make us completely dependent upon others so America can be warm and fuzzy and green and natural?
I don't know if that's the goal, but I think it's what will end up happening if we don't find a way to stand up to this administration's policies. You know, it's very unfortunate because we're sitting on vast energy resources in this country. We've got the capabilities to be, if not American energy independent, North American energy independent in the very near future. And you know, we have an administration that would rather not use our own resources, and it's really tragic. I think it's very misguided. It's hard to understand, frankly.
Well, that's what lends credence to the argument by people. I used to have a friend who hosted this show with me, Marvin Sanders, and Marvin's passed away, gone on to heaven. But Marvin used to say, and I was a little skittish about his belief in this, but this was 10, 15 years ago. He would say they're trying to shut down America's economic engine. And I said, who is? He said the socialist. The Marxist. I said, they hate America. They hate what we stand for. It's colonialist. It's capitalist. It's free enterprise. It's greed. It's, whatever. And so they want to bring down our energy, become dependent, and that's the way to hurt the American economy the most.
Right.
And I would say, this black helicopter stuff's spooking me here, man. You need to. And he said, well, you don't have to believe me, but they're trying to tear down the timber industry, and you look all around. In the name of what? I said. He said, in the name of being green, in the name of saving the animals. So in the name, whatever you want to say, they use some kind of higher calling in their eyes to project to the American people as a reason for a war on coal, for example.
And what doesn't go through the legislature, and you can look back to other presidents that, other than just President Obama, you can look back. Some of the things they couldn't get through the legislature, they do get through EPA regulations, which I think is one of the things that Phil Kerpen does a great job to point out to us.
Has the Republican Party, in your view, done enough to push back against the administration on these ridiculous regulations and so forth? Because they have had control of the House.
They've had a lot of votes. They have had a lot of votes. They had another one in the House today on one aspect of the war on coal we didn't even talk about, which is the EPA rule on coal ash. They want to make coal ash a hazardous substance and make it hard to transport and hamstring the industry that way. That got 265 votes today, stopping that, including 39 Democrats. And so, the House has done a lot of things pretty effectively, but, the Senate Democrats have a deliberate strategy of blocking any effort to hold the Obama administration and the EPA accountable. And so we've run into that problem time after time in the Senate. And in fact, Barbara Boxer said earlier this year that her strategy for energy policy was not to pass any bills, not to propose any policies for the country, but just to block any Republican effort to limit the EPA from doing more or less whatever they want. And so this is the Republicans have tried to do things, but the Democrats have a strategy here, which I find deeply offensive to the whole way our system, our constitutional government is supposed to work. They've got a strategy of deliberately taking Congress out of the game, staying on the sidelines, and letting the bureaucrats more or less run wild.
We're out of time. Phil, thanks for yours. We encourage people to go to your website, Phil Kerpen, KERPEN.com. Thank you, Phil.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.
God bless.
All right.
Tim, it's been another, for me, a particularly enjoyable hour and a half, and I hope it has been for our listeners as well. We've done some